The homeless man gave his only meal to a crying millionaire. What he said will break you inside. It was night. A light drizzle fell from the sky. In the heart of a big city, a man in a wrinkled suit and hollow stare sat silently on the sidewalk. Tears rolling down his face, Ricardo Salazar. A billionaire once known for his coldness and arrogance in the business world, had just lost everything: his fortune, his family, and his reputation. Betrayed by his own partners, falsely accused, and now invisible to the society that once praised him, no one stopped. No one even looked, until someone appeared, someone he never would have expected. A thin homeless man, with calm eyes and calloused hands, carrying a paper bag with his only meal of the day, a cheap sandwich. Carefully wrapped, the homeless man sat next to him, without judgment, and offered the bread with a gentle smile. Ricardo hesitated, but accepted. Then the homeless man said something that shattered him inside. "The world only sees you when you have something. I saw you because I used to be you." That phrase, simple yet brutally true, awakened painful memories in Ricardo, his poor childhood. The mother he abandoned and the compassion he lost along the way. Moved by that gesture, Ricardo chose to walk among the city's forgotten. He met Maria, a nun who delivers food at dawn, Lionel, a black boy who lost his parents and lives off cardboard and don't need, pregnant neighbor raising 3 children with no government help. In this world where no one has anything, Ricardo found what all his money had never given him: affection, dignity, and redemption. But time was not on his side. An old enemy from the elite discovered his new life and threatened to destroy everything, even the people he now loved. In the end, Ricardo would have to make a choice: return to the top with a lie, or remain grounded in the truth. The Beggar and the Crying Millionaire. Chapter 1. The Silent Fall. In the rain of humiliation, the night swallowed the city in a cold, damp embrace. A fine drizzle fell, washing over the asphalt and the facades of towering buildings, but failing to cleanse the dirt from the soul lying on the sidewalk. Ricardo Salazar, a name once echoed in the halls of power, was now just a hunched figure. A crumpled, soaked suit, dark stain in the vast indifference of the metropolis. Billionaire, cold, arrogant. These were the words that defined him. But tonight, none of them mattered. He had just lost everything. His fortune, built on pillars of relentless ambition and unscrupulous deals, had crumbled. Betrayed by his own partners, unjustly accused of crimes he didn't commit, but that perfectly fit his predatory reputation, Ricardo was expelled from his empire. His family, accustomed to luxury and distant from any genuine emotional bond, abandoned him, unable to cope with the ruin and shame. The society that once revered him now ignored him as if he were a ghost, a stain to be avoided. The man who saw the world as a chessboard and people as pawns was now himself discarded, cast aside, invisible. Car lights sped by, swift and merciless, briefly cutting through the darkness, revealing Ricardo's body like refuse, only to disappear. Carrying with them the driver's indifference, no one stopped. No one looked. Ricardo felt the cold sidewalk seep into his bones, mingling with the chill in his soul. Tears streamed silently down his face, washed away by the rain, a cry that was more a lament of the soul than a sound. He was a dethroned king, a humiliated titan, and the world, his former kingdom, had become his silent executioner. The pain of material loss was immense, but the pain of invisibility, of insignificance, was a torment his fortune had never prepared him for. Chapter 2. The bread of humility and the phrase that breaks time. Ricardo's despair was a never-ending ocean, and he drowned in his own misery, ignored by the city he once dominated. But then a figure emerged from the gloom, a thin, unpretentious silhouette that materialized from nowhere. Not a car, not a hurried pedestrian.
He was a beggar.
A man with a serene gaze and calloused hands, his eyes as deep as wells that had seen too much. He carried a crumpled paper bag, from which a faint smell of bread emanated, his only meal of the day, a cheap sandwich carefully wrapped, with a care Ricardo would never dedicate to anything so trivial. The beggar, without words, without judgment, sat down beside Ricardo on the wet sidewalk. There was no pity in his gaze, but a strange familiarity. He unwrapped the sandwich and offered it to Ricardo with a calm, genuine smile, a generosity that defied all logic in a world where everything had a price. Ricardo hesitated, his wounded pride battling with a hunger he dared not admit. A reluctance was overcome by necessity and the purity of that gesture. He took the bread, feeling the roughness of the paper and the warmth of the sandwich, a warmth that seemed to come not from the food, but from compassion. As Ricardo accepted the bread, the beggar looked directly into his eyes, and then his voice, hoarse but laden with a wisdom that transcended time and social classes. He said something that shattered everything inside Ricardo. The world only looks at you when you have something. I only saw you because I used to be you too. That phrase, simple yet brutally true, hit Ricardo like a lightning bolt. It wasn't just an observation, it was a revelation, an unexpected and painful connection to a past he had tried to erase. The sight of the beggar, his deep eyes, and the phrase that stripped him bare, opened a fissure in Ricardo's soul, awakening painful memories of the poor childhood he disowned, of the mother he abandoned in his ascent, and of the compassion he lost along the way, traded for ambition. The beggar, in his misery, had given him the greatest gift of his life, the truth about himself. Chapter 3. The Ghosts of the Past and the First. Step into darkness, the beggar's words, I only saw you because I used to be you too, echoed in Ricardo's mind with a deafening clarity. The rain continued, but now it seemed to wash not just the dirt from his suit, but the grime from his soul. The man who had challenged him was not just a beggar. He was a mirror, showing him the path he had traveled and the destiny that awaited him if he continued in his blindness. Ricardo lifted his head and tried to speak to the beggar, to ask more, to understand. But, as mysteriously as he had appeared, the beggar had vanished into the night's darkness, leaving Ricardo alone, drenched, but with a new and terrifying clarity. He had been saved, not by money, but by unexpected kindness and a cruel truth. Moved by this and feeling an urgency he didn't comprehend, Ricardo decided to do something he would never have imagined. Infiltrate among the city's forgotten. He needed to find the beggar, to understand his words, but above all, he needed to understand himself. He exchanged his crumpled suit for simple clothes donated by a hospital employee who felt sorry for him. He wandered through streets and alleys, through makeshift shelters and community kitchens, an outsider in a world he had deliberately ignored his entire life. He saw misery up close, smelled despair, but also witnessed the resilience, solidarity, dignity that existed among those society had cast aside. His first steps into this new world led him to meet Maria, a charismatic nun who delivered food. In the early mornings, her kind eyes reflecting a compassion Ricardo had forgotten. Maria, who knew the stories of the disadvantaged thoroughly, told him about Millionaire, a vibrant black boy who had lost his parents and survived by collecting cardboard to help his sick grandmother. Ricardo felt a pang in his chest, remembering his own solitary childhood. He also met Donna Need, a pregnant neighbor connecting to the previous script. If we are linking stories, who cared for 3 children with no government assistance, strength and resilience inspiring him. In the midst of this world, where no one had anything, Ricardo began to find what he never had with all his money: affection, dignity, and the seed of redemption. It was an uncharted territory, and with every step, the man he once was began to dissolve. Ricardo Salazar's downfall led to an unforgettable encounter. One phrase changed everything. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this emotional journey of redemption and self-discovery. Hit like if you were also touched by the beggar's words and Ricardo's transformation. Share this video so more people can dive into this tale of destiny, humility, and the power of forgiveness. Comment below. What do you think, Ricardo? Will discover about himself in this world of the forgotten. Will he find the beggar again? The Beggar and the Crying Millionaire, Chapter 4, The School of the Streets and the Look of Hope. Ricardo, once a reclusive billionaire in his ivory tower, was now an apprentice in the streets. The smell of misery and the harsh reality of abandonment were daily lessons, yet amidst it all, he found a dignity and strength he had never seen in the halls of Wall Street. He infiltrated deeper and deeper into the world of the forgotten, exchanging the coldness of numbers for the human warmth of stories. Maria, the charismatic nun who distributed food in the early mornings, became his first guide. Him not only about basic needs, but about the resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering faith that resisted hunger and cold. Ricardo, the skeptic, began to see faith from a new perspective, not as dogma, but as a driving force of hope. Each dawn, Ricardo accompanied Maria on her food distribution rounds, witnessing gratitude in hungry eyes and dignity in toothless smiles. He saw life pulsating where he thought only despair existed. It was in these nocturnal encounters that he met Lionel, a 10-year-old black boy with bright eyes and a disarming smile. Lionel had lost his parents and survived by collecting cardboard and cans to help his sick grandmother. He was thin, his clothes worn, but his determination to survive and his ability to find joy in small things deeply touched Ricardo. The boy refused to beg, preferring to earn his bread through effort. Ricardo, who had neglected his own childhood in pursuit of success, saw in Lionel a purity he had lost. He felt a strange connection with the boy, a need to protect him, to give him the future he never had the chance to live. Ricardo began to help Lionel discreetly, offering him services the boy could perform, paying him a fair wage, ensuring he and his grandmother had food and a little comfort. Lionel's gaze, full of a hope Ricardo had forgotten, was a powerful motivating force for the millionaire on his journey of redemption. Chapter 20. Donna Need's secret and the echo of a distant past with each day Ricardo spent among the forgotten. He felt his heart, once an icy stone, soften. The stories of Maria, Lionel, and other homeless residents were life lessons worth more than any MBA course. He began to care, to feel the pain, joy, hope, and frustration of people he once didn't even notice. His internal transformation, though slow and painful, was undeniable. He exchanged his time, not money, for knowledge, for empathy, for a humanity he had abandoned. It was during this process that Ricardo approached Donna Need, Daniel's pregnant neighbor, connecting from the previous script, if we are linking stories, who was now also a central figure in the community. Donna Need cared for her 3 children without any government assistance. Her strength and resilience were inspiring. She, with the frankness of poverty, spoke of the hardships, but also of the dignity they maintained. Ricardo offered to help, not with direct money, but with resources for the children's education. With plans for a better future, Donna Need, who had seen the change in Ricardo, and still with the caution of one living on the fringes, decided to share a secret that tormented her. She revealed that years ago, in her youth, she had worked in the Salazar household as a domestic helper, had witnessed something disturbing. Ricardo's father, in a fit of rage and greed, had manipulated the will of a dying partner, stealing a significant portion of the fortune that should have gone to a charity. Donna Need had been fired shortly after, but the memory of the crime haunted her. The revelation was a brutal blow to Ricardo, who felt the weight of his own family's sin, a crime he never knew, but that now stained his own lineage. He was not just a man who had lost compassion. He was the heir to a fortune built on injustice. The truth crushed him. Chapter 6. The unbearable truth and the echo of the forgotten past. Donna Need's revelation about his father's crime resonated in Ricardo's soul like thunder, breaking the last barriers of his denial. He was not just a man who had been cold and arrogant. He was the heir to a fortune tainted by a crime of his own blood. Guilt, which once consumed him for his own mistakes, now stretched across generations, a legacy of injustice that haunted him. He felt the weight of the inheritance, the urgent need to make amends not only for his own faults, but also for those of his family. The empire he had built was, in fact, a monument to his own blindness and to the corruption of his roots. Overwhelmed by despair, Ricardo sought out Maria, the nun who had guided him into this new world. He confessed to her the truth about his father, the tainted origin of his fortune, and the torment that consumed him.
Oh.
Maria listened with compassion, her kind eyes reflecting Ricardo's pain. She reminded him that reparation was not easy, but it was the only path to true redemption. She encouraged him to use the truth to free himself and to honor the memory of his mother, who always valued dignity above all else. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, Ricardo had a clear vision of his mother, the same Donna Antonia, whom he had expelled from home, connecting again to the premise of the son expels the millionaire mother. She was not angry, but sad, with a look that seemed to say, "I warned you, my son." The ghost of the mother he abandoned was a painful reminder of his own blindness and the wisdom he ignored. The vision was a brutal cliffhanger, a final confrontation with the unconditional love he scorned and the wisdom he ignored. Ricardo knew he needed to find his mother, not to ask for money, but to ask for forgiveness, to acknowledge the queen he had expelled. Ricardo's journey had reached a critical point, where he would have to choose between remaining on the ground with the truth or trying to return to the top with a lie. Chapter 7. The Face of Reconciliation and the Shadow of the Past Jonas. The wise, homeless man's words echoed in Ricardo's mind. You scorned her for not being a queen of gold, unaware that she was always a queen of soul, and she holds a secret that can destroy you, or save you. Driven by this enigmatic revelation and a growing desperation, Ricardo followed the coordinates Jonas had given him. They got the simple house in the heart of a small rural community, contrasted sharply with the glass palaces he had built. The smell of wet earth and wildflowers replaced the concrete and city exhaust. He felt a strange mix of apprehension and hope. As he approached, Ricardo saw Donna Antonia sitting on the porch, knitting a patchwork quilt, her face serene, and her hands calloused exactly as he remembered her. Beside her was Sister Clara, the charismatic nun Jonas had spoken of, and a pregnant woman, the neighbor Maria, smiling. The atmosphere was one of peace and simplicity, something Ricardo had rejected. In his pursuit of luxury, Antonia looked up, and her eyes, once filled with pain and sadness on the night of the expulsion, now looked at him with a calm that disarmed him. There was no accusation, only profound understanding. Ricardo, for the first time in a long time, felt completely naked, stripped of his armor of arrogance. He fell to his knees before his mother, tears streaming down his face. They were not tears of despair, but of deep, sincere regret. "Mom, forgive me," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I was a monster. I kicked you out. I shamed." You, Donna Antonia, with a gentle smile and tear-filled eyes, reached out and touched his face. "My son," she said, her voice soft like a lullaby, "I never stopped loving you." The embrace that followed was the first bridge to reconciliation, a reckoning that spanned years of silence and pain. Chapter 8. The Truth. From the past and the weight of innocence, the initial reconciliation with Donna Antonia was an immense relief. For Ricardo, but also the beginning of a new and deeper journey. Sitting at Donna Antonia's simple kitchen table, the smell of fresh bread in the air, she began to tell her story, not just of her life after the expulsion, but the secret she had kept for decades. She spoke of Mr. Arthur Goldstein, the elderly millionaire she cared for, a man who became her friend and mentor. She detailed the secret will and the fortune he had left her, explaining her decision never to touch the money, living a life of simplicity to teach Roberto about dignity, effort, and compassion. Ricardo listened, shocked. The irony of the situation crushing him. He had expelled a millionaire from his own home, out of pride and ignorance. Sister Clara and the neighbor Maria, with their supportive presence, listened to the story, silent witnesses to the pain and redemption. They shared how Donna Antonia had become a queen in the community, her kindness, her strength, her humility, inspiring everyone. Ricardo saw the woman he had rejected as a burden now celebrated as a beacon of light, a brutal contrast to his own fall in the big city. The truth about the fortune hit Ricardo like a lightning bolt, not just for the money he despised, but for the depth of the lesson his mother tried to teach him. But the hardest truth was yet to come. Donna Antonia then revealed why Mr. Goldstein, in his final days, had entrusted her not only with his fortune, but also with a box of old documents. These documents, she explained, revealed the true origin of the Salazar family's fortune, Ricardo's own company. It hadn't been built purely on merit, but through a series of frauds, manipulations, and shady deals committed by Ricardo's father and other ancestors. The original sin of his family, a secret Ricardo never knew. Donna Antonia's fortune was, in part, a conscience-stricken restitution from Arthur Goldstein, who had old and complicated ties to the Salazar family and had witnessed their transgressions. The revelation was a brutal cliffhanger, a double blow. Not only was his mother a millionaire, but Roberto's own fortune was stained by corruption and injustice, forcing him to confront the sins of his own lineage. Chapter 9. The Weight of Legacy and the Cry for Reparation, Donna Antonia's. Revelation about the tainted origin of the Salazar fortune hit Ricardo with the force of an earthquake. The luxury in which he had grown up, the power he so coveted, everything was built on a foundation of lies and injustice. He was not only guilty of his own actions, but also the heir to a legacy of sin that drowned him in shame. The image of his father, once a model of success, now distorted into a portrait of dishonor. Ricardo felt the weight of karma, the urgent need to make amends not only for his own faults, but also for those of his lineage. Time, which he valued so much, was now an enemy, for truth, once unleashed, could not be silenced. At his lowest point, Ricardo found himself tormented by nightmares and hallucinations. He saw the faces of the people harmed by his father's company-exploited workers, families evicted, illegally expropriated lands. Money, once his fortress, was now his tormentor, every penny a reminder of the suffering it had caused. He felt trapped in a web of guilt that spanned generations. The pride he had cultivated completely crumbled, revealing a vulnerable man desperate for redemption. The image of Gabriel, his innocence, and the pure bond he had formed with Lucas were the only light in his darkness. At the height of his anguish, Ricardo sought out Father Benedito, who had arrived in the community to visit Donna Antonia. He confessed everything his family's sins, his burning desire to make amends. Father Benedito, with his wisdom, listened and guided him to the only way out: truth and action. It wasn't enough to feel guilty, he had to act. Ricardo then made a monumental decision: would use the fortune his mother inherited and that he had despised, along with what remained of his own assets, to dismantle the Salazar empire and create a foundation dedicated to rectifying his family's wrongs, to social justice, and to building a new form of wealth based on dignity and compassion. It was his soul's cry for reparation. It's a painful but necessary path to redemption. Chapter 10. The Beginning of the Dismantling and the Unexpected. Alliance Roberto's decision to dismantle the Salazar empire and use the fortune for reparation shocked everyone. His lawyers and partners, who were still trying to rebuild the company, considered him insane. But Roberto was unwavering. He initiated a public and transparent audit of all the construction company's past contracts and projects, revealing the frauds, irregularities, and the lives that had been negatively impacted. The news exploded in the media, overshadowing the scandal of his illegitimate son and transforming him into a controversial figure, no longer the ruthless millionaire, but the man who was tearing down his own empire to settle scores with the past. The Sophia Vance Foundation, which had been created to help Mariana and Lucas, now expanded to become the Salazar Foundation, repairing the past with an ambitious focus on restorative justice, community development, and support for victims of corporate injustices. Roberto dedicated every ounce of his energy to the foundation. Working side by side with Father Benedito and Sister Clara, he became a learner, listening to communities seeking ways to compensate for the suffering caused by his family. He no longer wore expensive suits, but simple clothes, his hands dirty from the soil of project visits, his face marked by fatigue, but his eyes filled with a light money had never given him. While the media focused on Roberto's sacrifice, an unexpected alliance began to form in the communities. Jonas, the wise homeless man, became one of the foundation's main advisors. Using his knowledge of the streets and marginalized life to guide Roberto. The gossipy neighbor, Donna Celia, who once spread rumors, had now become an enthusiastic volunteer. Using her network to mobilize the community in support of the foundation, Sister Betania herself, the nun who rejected Mariana, after being confronted with her own sin of judgment, sought forgiveness and offered to work for the foundation. Roberto's past was being unearthed, but instead of destroying him, it was rebuilding him, and, more importantly, he was rediscovering his own soul. The cliffhanger was the promise of a final reckoning, an encounter that would define Roberto's legacy. Roberto is dismantling his empire to atone for his family's sins. The Salazar Foundation is being born. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this unprecedented journey of redemption. Hit like if you believe that truth and reparation can rebuild lives and legacies. Share this video so more people can see how a man is stripping himself of everything to find his soul. Comment below. What do you think will happen to the Salazar Empire? Will Roberto find the peace he seeks by repairing the past? The Beggar and the Crying Millionaire, Chapter 11. Rebuilding life and the community's call after being discharged from the hospital. Ricardo didn't return to his luxury penthouse. He moved to a modest house in the same neighborhood where Lucas and Mariana lived, a decision that shocked his former colleagues in the media. His life of luxury was replaced by a routine of simplicity and hard work at the Sophia Vance Foundation. He immersed himself in social projects, working side by side with the community, listening to their needs and using his analytical mind to create real solutions for poverty, violence, and social exclusion. His days were filled with visits to shelters, meetings with community leaders, and, most importantly, time devoted to Lucas and Mariana. The reconciliation with Mariana, Lucas's mother, was a slow and painful process. Ricardo didn't pressure her. He simply was present. He ensured that she and Lucas had a safe home, access to health care, and all the opportunities that money could provide. He spent hours listening to Mariana's stories, the pain of abandonment, the struggle on the streets, the rejection by Sister Betania, who, confronted by Father Benedito and the press, was removed from her duties at the shelter. Ricardo couldn't erase the past, but he could build a different future. Lucas, for his part, thrived. The presence of his biological father and his brother Gabriel brought a light to his eyes that had once been empty. He began going to school, playing, smiling in a way Roberto had never seen. The community, which had once viewed him with suspicion, began to accept him, to see him not as the repentant millionaire, but as the man who was helping. Ricardo's transformation was visible, in every gesture, in every word. The homeless man Jonas, now sober and sheltered by the foundation, became a confidant, a living reminder of his past and a testament to his redemption. Ricardo no longer ran from himself. He embraced his history and used it to drive change. The press, in turn, continued to document his journey. And the story of Ricardo Salazar became a global example of redemption and the power of forgiveness. Chapter 12. The Climax. The stage of revealed truth and the legacy of a name. The culmination of Ricardo's transformation occurred during a large awareness event organized by the Sophia Vance Foundation. In a public square in the neighborhood where Lucas and Mariana lived, it wasn't a gala event, but a celebration of community and hope. Thousands of people attended, local residents, beneficiaries of the foundation, the press, and important figures like Father Benedito and Sister Cecilia, who came from Italy to support Ricardo. Roberto was about to take the stage to speak, but a murmur swept through the crowd. A woman, with a serious demeanor but eyes that carried the pain of a lifetime, approached the stage. It was Sophia Vance, Ricardo's ex-wife and Gabriel's mother. She had come not to confront him but to bear witness. Roberto saw her, their eyes met, and a respectful silence fell over the square. Sophia walked onto the stage and took the microphone. Before Roberto could begin to speak, her voice, initially choked, resonated with surprising strength. She spoke of Lara's accident, of the pain that had consumed her, of how Roberto had shut himself off and abandoned her. She did not spare him, describing the coldness and arrogance he had shown. But then her voice changed. She spoke of the boy Lucas, of the Sophia Vance Foundation, of the transformation Roberto had undergone. She acknowledged the effort, humility, and dedication he had shown. Sophia then turned to Roberto, her eyes teary. "You caused immense pain, Roberto," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "But you are trying to make amends. And for Matteo, for Gabriel, for Sophia, and for Lara. I choose to believe in you." She extended her hand to him. In that moment, there were no ex-spouses, only two souls united by pain and hope. Roberto took her hand, tears rolling down his face. It was then that from the audience, a small boy with innocence in his gaze ran towards the stage. It was Gabriel. Behind him came Lucas, now with a sparkle in his eyes that he hadn't had before. The two boys went up to the stage and embraced Roberto, forming a circle. The audience applauded not only for the confession, but for the family uniting there, not by blood, but by a new form of love and forgiveness. The truth had been revealed, the sin confronted, and forgiveness, finally, found capitulo Shersen. Legacy of a name and the rebuilt family, the touch of Sophia's hand in his was more healing than any medicine. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but a truce, a seed of hope planted in what was once barren ground. Ricardo understood that redemption was not a destination, but a continuous journey, a daily choice. His foundation, now active and robust, began to transform lives. Lana and her team worked tirelessly to reverse the damage caused by his old company, channeling resources into clean energy projects, shelters for women, and support for marginalized communities. Ricardo, once a feared CEO, was now a humble administrator, present at every meeting. Not dictating orders, but listening with his heart. His relationship with Mariana, Lucas's mother, evolved from a plea for forgiveness into a working partnership and a friendship forged in pain and triumph. Mariana, now a strong and empowered woman, became a central figure in the foundation, using her own experience to help other vulnerable women. Ricardo ensured she had a safe home, access to healthcare, and all the opportunities that money could provide. The brother who revealed the truth grew up happy and healthy, surrounded by the love of a family he never knew he had. He was living proof that love could heal the deepest wounds. The reconciliation with Sophia, Ricardo's ex-wife and Gabriel's mother, was a delicate but significant process. The pain of Lara's loss was still a scar, but Ricardo's effort to redeem himself and the love shared for Gabriel and Lucas brought a new form of unity. Sophia became an advisor to the foundation, combining her passion for philanthropy with Ricardo's resources to create an even greater impact. Ricardo's family was no longer defined by blood ties and money, but by a complex tapestry of forgiveness, acceptance, and unconditional love, demonstrating that even after the greatest of tragedies, hope can blossom. Capitulo Shisu. The price of heaven and the echo of unconditional love years past. Ricardo Salazar, now an older man with white hair and a gentle smile, was known not for his former wealth, but for the legacy of love and compassion he had built. The Sophia Vance Foundation was a global success, transforming lives and inspiring social justice worldwide. Ricardo was frequently invited to speak, not about business, but about the journey of his soul, the price of his sins, and the joy of finding redemption through service to others. He always began his speeches with his son's phrase, "Dad, my brother," and ended with the proof that true wealth lay not in his billions, but in the lives he had touched and in the peace he had found. Lucas and Gabriel, now young adults, were inseparable. Lucas, with the foundation's support, became a community leader, dedicating his life to giving a voice to the forgotten, just as he once had been. Gabriel followed in his father's footsteps, but with a new consciousness, using the technology for social good rather than profit. Two were living manifestations of Ricardo's redemption, the proof that love and acceptance could transcend social barriers and the secrets of the past. The story ends with Ricardo, in his old age, sitting on the same park bench where he and Lara used to play. Lucas, now adult, sits beside him. The memory of Lara still was there, a bittersweet ache, but now tempered by the peace he had found in his redemption. He had lost everything material in his life, but he had gained something infinitely more valuable: his soul. His last sin had been redeemed through love and service. He closed his eyes, listening to the sounds of the park, the children's laughter, the birds' song. And in his mind, he heard again the cry of a barefoot, desperate black boy. "Don't get in the car." Now the cry was not a warning of death, but an eternal echo of life, of hope, and of the soul he had finally found. Capitulo Shul, the legacy beyond the end. Roberto Salazar's life didn't end with the silence on the park bench. The legacy he built spread like ripples in a pond, touching countless lives. The Sophia Vance Foundation, under Lucas and Gabriel's leadership, became an unstoppable force for social change, a symbol that power, when used with compassion, can heal and transform. The young engineer's clean energy projects were finally realized, lighting up entire communities and honoring the memory of his lost vision. Shelters for women experiencing violence flourished, offering safety and hope to hundreds of Marianas. Roberto's story, told in books and documentaries, became a vivid reminder that true redemption isn't about escaping consequences, but about embracing them and transforming them into a greater purpose. The arrogant millionaire became the man with a redeemed soul, and his name, once tarnished, was now associated with hope and service. He taught the world that shame and guilt can be overcome, that forgiveness, both given and received, is the key to true freedom. The final scene of the script is a tranquil cemetery, where Roberto Salazar's headstone rests beside Laura's, with a simple inscription: "Where love and forgiveness bloom, the soul finds its true home." On a sunny day, Gabriel and Lucas, now adults with their own families, visit the graves. They tell stories to their children, Roberto's grandchildren, about the strong woman, Donna and Tinia, who taught dignity, about the cry of a boy who saved a soul, and about the man who, by losing everything, found heaven on earth. The echo of "Dad, ... he's my brother," was no longer a cry of pain or revelation, but a song of unconditional love that transcended generations. Proving that the legacy of a redeemed soul is eternal, we've reached the end of this emotional journey of redemption. If Roberto's story and his family's journey have moved you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming stories of life and overcoming adversity. Hit the like button if you believe that true wealth lies in love and forgiveness, not in money. Share this video so more people can discover the power of transformation and hope. Comment below. What lesson do you take away from Roberto's story? You believe everyone can find redemption?